I'm Joey Davila. I am a longtime developer evangelist, developer relations person, developer advocate. I've actually bounced between building the things and then taking the things to market. And we're going to see over the next little while, definitely over the next 18 months, this evolution of the way that we create content in order that it is digestible by AIs, but also findable by AIs. In the end, I would say what you should do is find one problem that eats up a lot of your time and see if you can apply AI to at least help you with the workload or reduce the time that it takes to perform that particular task. And in the process, you will learn how to use AI to solve that particular situation and, of course, get more confident in using AI for future situations. In the end, confidence is just remembering past successes more than anything else.
Boom. Yep. If everything worked, we should be live now.
Okay.
Hey everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Everything Outside Code, where I talk to a GTM expert, a founder, a marketing leader about the really hard parts of going to market, right? So everything outside code, basically. And today I have Joey Davila, who's a GTM expert at Net Foundry. I'll let him do all the talking shortly. But yeah, I'm super excited about this episode. We're going to talk everything about community, content, obviously the hot topic, which is AI, probably dive a bit into like the tech scene in Tampa, Florida as well. But we're just going to have fun geeking out about better going to market strategies, I can imagine. To the man at the moment, Joey, thanks for coming on.
Hey, William, thank you for having me. So, I suppose I should introduce myself. I'm Joey Davila. I am a longtime developer evangelist, developer relations person, developer advocate. And yes, I have been in the go to market business for quite some time. I've also been a developer. I've actually bounced between building the things and then taking the things to market. And it's always an interesting thing because, of course, you get to see both sides of the equation. You get to see the thing being made, and you understand the underlying technology and principles behind it. But at the same time, you also are, in the end, without the market, you have no reason to do that. So I'm very glad to have been on the go to market side where I have talked with customers, assisted the marketing and occasionally the sales teams, and just helped get the things that people need to the people who need them. And I am on day 3 of a job, so I'm brand new at it as a senior developer advocate at Net Foundry, which is a big, exciting adventure.
That's amazing. Congrats, man. This is your first week.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, but it's already been exciting. Actually, I have already filed my first bug report, and because the guys at NetFoundry work pretty hard and pretty fast, they've already fixed it. And it's really good. And I actually filed that bug report. I filed that bug report because what I was doing was I was trying to build some examples to show to both developers and customers what you can do with NetFoundry service, and I should probably explain that in a little bit. And yeah, stumbled across a bug, and it's only because the new Mac 5, the new Mac M5 machines came out. I just got one, and there was a slight incompatibility, but they fixed it. It's just because these machines are brand new, and of course, a lot of the code was written for earlier computers. The new M5s have only been out a month.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting aspect of the current market right now is that the
hmm
innovation and the new things are coming out at such a pace. It takes a lot of work just to keep up.
Yeah. It does take a lot, like a whole lot of work to keep up for sure. But I'm very interested in how important have you found it to be that you're able to sit on both sides? You're able to see things from both sides, but from a technical standpoint and also like a growth standpoint. How important is it today that you're able to do that?
Today, especially today, in fact, today as opposed to maybe even just a few months ago, it is incredibly important. And part of that, of course, is because of the 2 letters that have changed everything in the past a couple of years, A and I. And part of it is that, of course, before, especially before last year, I would say, when coding tools, AI coding tools became good enough that you could start really, really relying on them. In the before times, you software development involved a lot of knowledge about the specific programming languages and programming techniques and the fine, fine details. But in a world of uh, what they call, what they casually call vibe coding, and what a lot of other people are saying, no, 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 that's called agentic coding, AI assisted coding. It's less about the details of the specific programming languages and more about expressing the kind of problem you want to solve to the machine, which means that you're operating at a higher level now. You're more interested in what the result is than how you get that result. And the only way to be good at that is to, you actually have to step a little bit away from the technology and a little bit closer to the problem you're trying to solve. And of course, the people who want to use your solution. You have to be closer to the market, to the customer, to the actual users whose problems you're trying to solve and who are going to give you money to solve that problem. And that requires operating on both sides now. And this is going to be an interesting challenge because I know a number of programmers who are very, very good at what they do. They are brilliant craftspeople when it comes to the technology and the programming languages. But they've always said, you know what? I don't want to deal with people. I don't want to deal with the market. I just want to tool around with this thing because this is the kind of thing I like. Things are going to be a little more difficult for you if
Yeah.
you have that mindset, just because this is not the way technology works anymore, and technology
Yeah.
is moving towards closer and closer to that middle ground. So you've got programmers who are also good product managers, and you've got product managers now who have, thanks to AI, the capability to start building, if not the complete thing, at least a prototype.
Yeah, that's these are really interesting times. I say that in go to market, in the bid, everyone would either be a researcher or a creator.
Hmm.
Those are, I feel like those are the only, like, the two roles that would exist. Folks uncovering unknown unknowns that machines and humans would need to act upon, and those that are creating inherently new, um, new ways to be expressive. So the creators that we know, and machines will orchestrate, test, and figure out what's working and also what's not working to inform either the work the researcher does or the work the creator does. That's just how I've been thinking about it lately as I try to condense roles um, to the highest functioning unit that needs to exist in, especially in GTM spaces. Is this something you've
Yeah.
thought about for GTM, especially?
Yes, and I'm inclined to agree. And the real challenge, of course, is this is all new. We have no long tradition, no long, no long-standing practices for navigating this new world. So it's an exciting time. For some people, it can also be a terrifying time because we are figuring this out as we go along.
Yep. So I totally agree with you. You did mention something that piqued my interest, which was there is the need to be expressive, to be able to communicate and be very outcome driven. We've been able to do this a lot through content, right, in the past. But now we've seen that just being able to be more expressive and detailed. It started out with something folks call prompt engineering, right? As soon as we figured we had to write prompt for machines, it was prompt engineering. And now there's a whole body of work that is emerging that is context engineering that has moved beyond just prompts to how you structure data, how you package these data for AI agents, right, to work with. As a developer advocate, is this something you've had to think about? Context engineering, seeing that context engineering could also be active and passive. So you could actively curate context for an agent, or you could passively do that by creating content that you publish online or you publish in third party sources. And this eventually get pulled in as context for the product. So are you thinking about context engineering within AI agents and AI systems, obviously within the scope of content in general?
Absolutely. And in fact, I was recently, just last week, in fact, at a conference in Austin, Texas called Arc of AI. And a good number of the talks were about context engineering. And the phrase context is king kept coming up again and again. And they were talking about the challenges of working with systems that are heavily reliant on context. And my own talk, which I gave there, was about writing documentation and a sample code, not for people, but actually for machines. And the real
Mm,
challenge is that we're already seeing this right now. People are going less to search engines and they are simply asking the AI either a question, give me an answer to this, or if you are developing applications, you just specify, hey, write me this application. This is what I need. In either case, what you have to do is you have to provide the AI with information with that necessary context. And my talk was about structuring that context and keeping in mind that machines read things differently than humans, and there are different ways in which we feed the machinery that particular information or context, and that we need to start keeping that in mind when we write documentation, when we provide information or instructions, whether we are working on the documentation team, or in my particular case as a developer advocate, I am now writing for a developer audience that may be human or may be mechanical, and I need to keep in mind those differences. So we're
yeah.
going to see over the next little while, definitely over the next 18 months, this evolution of the way that we create content in order that it is digestible by AIs, but also findable by AIs. And it's going to be a very interesting time for the market and go to market actions. You see that already. I have witnessed people just sitting around at the airport looking for recommendations, and they're no longer going to search engines. They're going to AIs, and the AIs are going to search engines, or they're using some internal information that they have, their own built-in system contexts, to provide answers back to their users. And we need to be able to write content for this brave new world.
Yeah. No, 100% I agree with you. Like, everyone currently, and there's proof, right? It's not like it's something we're talking about theoretically. I believe everyone that has some sort of telemetry going on can already go look into, say, Google Analytics, for instance, and they see referral traffic from ChatGPT, right? And once you start to see that referral traffic either go up or go down, it's managed. So as soon as or at least it's measured. As soon as it's measured, you need to manage it. You need to figure out, how do I get this number out, or how do I ensure it doesn't go down at least. So that's top of mind for everyone. But I'm curious, when you say we need to prepare the content that agents will consume. We need to package it properly. How exactly do you envision that could be done now? How do you do it currently? What are some of like the tactical bits that you employ, both for documentation content and other forms of written content?
Okay, well, a very simple, straightforward approach, one that I take right now, and keep in mind that this applies to present day AIs.
Hmm.
AI 18 or 24 months from now might actually process things differently. One of the things I tell everybody is keep an eye on AI technology and just at least learn how they process documents. But at the moment, a lot of documentation is being stored in RAG systems, retrieval augmented generation, where basically an AI is also given some documentation to augment what it already knows, and it's blended in with the input prompt. And combined with those two, AIs produce better results. It's like the closest human analogy to it is an open book test where you are allowed to bring a book or some notes with you and you answer questions on the test based on your knowledge plus what you have in your notes. The thing about RAG systems, retrieval augmented generation, is that those systems chop up their reference documents into smaller chunks. And those chunks are at least viewed independently from each other, which means that you have to write in such a way that small sections of your writing are independent from other sections because the AI might not necessarily see those. So you have to rely less on things that we have used in documentation and books and papers for a long time. Things like see the previous chapter, or as I mentioned, when sometimes you say as I mentioned before, or even in the previous section, you can't do that anymore. You have to treat it, you have to write your content so that individual chapters or sections are as independent as possible. And that's just simply because the matching algorithm for RAG systems tries to find the chunk or chunks that best match your questions. So it's best if you write that kind of documentation or material as independently as possible from other sections of the documentation. So that includes things like, for instance, a lot of documentation has a section called introduction. You may want to beef up that title and go introduction to using the name of whatever your system is or whatever you want to use. You're going to want to for any section you'll want to beef up the title so it just doesn't say troubleshooting. It says troubleshooting system X or software Y. You want to be as specific as possible because this material is going to be viewed this material is going to be viewed independently. And that is the nice thing is that's something you can do right now. It does not require any technology. It just requires a little bit of work on your part so that so that what you're writing is very specific. So
Yeah.
these are basically SEO tricks that are being translated to what some people are calling AEO or agent engine optimization.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That's a very good point. Is we just need to rethink the way we create content to provide as much context within a chunk of the
Hmm.
content. So you write a title, just writing overview or introduction is no longer enough.
Yes,
Introduction, that's just a word. It's not even a phrase, right? You want to write whole sentences as much as possible because an agent might just require that much context. And also, I would imagine for the token budget of whatever system is consuming your content, it'd be best if you provided the agent with as much context in that chunk so they don't have to do multiple runs and multiple scans that eventually consume more tokens. So you want to be as token efficient as possible
as possible.
for others, right? That will
Now
other
the
for agents that consume your content.
That's right, because of course everybody's using an AI, and that particular AI, of course, has a context window or the maximum number of tokens that can be used in the processing. And they may be deep into a conversation and they may have used a lot of their token budget. And you want to provide as much useful information as possible without hitting your hitting your readership with a token tax.
Yeah.
Interesting challenge, of course, is that these longer, more context heavy titles use up tokens. What you need to do is you need to start reducing certain kinds of writing, including what I call throat clearing content. That introductory paragraph where you go in this section, we will introduce, like, drop that. That's not useful information. That's all it that was meant to prompt a human reader, but it's no good for a machine reader. Just get to the point.
Yeah. That's a great point. So, and now I'm curious, right? What are ground truths that still exist? Because it feels like a lot is changing, like you just said, how we write. But what are some ground truths that still remain even as this evolution is happening? And what's changed?
I think the ground truth that remains in the end is actually a trick from journalism where they talk about the inverted pyramid writing system, where what you do is you write, save as much on introduction as possible, and you write the most important point near as close as possible to the beginning, and then go down into additional details with the least important or the least likely to be used detail at the very end. Put all the important stuff up front. Don't worry about introductions or setup. So this is the way that they traditionally teach journalists to write for newspapers. And it turns out that this is an excellent trick for writing for AI systems. But at the same time, we've had this for 100 years. It
Yeah.
just also works for humans who want to get the information immediately. And this was written for a time, of course, when the context window was how much paper was inside how many pages you could put inside a newspaper. There was a limited budget that the paper in the newspaper was the context window.
Hmm.
So of course, you wanted to get the important stuff first and you put the big story on the front page. Writing for AIs is now analogous to that. That you are now working with a context window. It's now a token budget instead of a limited amount of paper.
Yeah. And that's a good analogy. Is taking the inverted funnel approach. I mean, with social media these days, every post starts with either an eye catchy hook, or you just get straight to the point, right? You don't have to. We're working on a launch video internally for a partner at Hackmember, and um the intro to this video just went about first about the problem before going into the solution. And then we looked at it and we just collectively said, no one has that much time to give you 10 seconds, 10, 15 seconds before you actually get to the point. Like just hit with, we're introducing XYZ product. And then you can start to go down into like the problem and the solution, but just get with it right away. So that's a great point, for sure. And I guess, would you say that teams are currently adopting these and really thinking about it just from your experience and also from the conference you were recently at and the conversations you had there? Would you say that these are things and techniques that teams are rapidly exploring and looking at ways to improve their content production, for instance?
Some teams definitely are, and then some aren't. It's never evenly distributed. And I'm going to have to admit that if you're attending this conference, you are in that small percentage of you're in that small percentage of people who do have the opportunity to dive into the latest and greatest AI tools and techniques, and you happen to have the time to attend this conference during a particularly busy time of the year. It's also uh, the middle of that week of the conference was also April 15th, which in the US is the day when you have to file your taxes. So
Oh,
a, ve-
yeah,
a very busy time all around. The people who are attending this particular conference are able to be on the cutting edge. And I actually had a conversation where I had to remind somebody that there are a lot of people out there who are just doing everyday work that we have been doing for the past couple of decades, who haven't had the chance to hop on the AI train or play very much with AI tools. And these people are still holding up a large chunk of how our everyday lives work, and it's going to take them time to transition. And
yeah.
we need to be mindful of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine that. Also, change isn't easy in any way you look at it, right? It's always difficult to make a transition from some, especially if you have something that's working. but you're not sure this is going to work in the next 12 to 18 months, like you say, but it's still working. It's working for right now. You just need to think about what change looks like. But I'm thinking on your end, what's sort of like the biggest positive you've gotten from using AI as part of your workflow? What workflow is that? What's like the the best I'd say the best problems it's helped you solve or just argument solving?
Okay. Well, for me, actually, I'm taking it from a couple of angles because, of course, as doing developer advocacy work is about communication and it's oftentimes related to marketing. So there is the production of content. AI has basically given me superpowers as far as content creation goes. One thing I like to say, and I will keep saying it for the next little while, is that it is great for ideation. By definition, the one thing you cannot do is come up with a list of ideas you would never think of. But AI is
Yeah,
great for that. It will help you generate ideas that you may not have thought of, or you might never be able to think of. Or
yeah,
at least it's also very good at taking some ideas that you do have and coming up with variations on those. The other very good thing that it's fantastic for is there are times when I'm just facing the tyranny of the blank page. Sometimes it's really hard when you're trying to generate content and you've got the blank document in front of you and you can't come up. It's hard to come up with anything. But what it's a lot easier to do is to revise something, even if it is a junky first revision. I like using AI to come up with a first draft that I think is terrible. It's based on some bullet points I provided, and it's so much easier to revise. I think it's just a human capability of ours where we go, you know what, this is junk. I can write better than that. I can fix this thing, and you start revising. But that is often the single spark that's necessary for you to start creating that content that you need to by the deadline. And
hmm
it's fantastic for that. It's helped me out with that greatly. I have also used it to I've also used it to do synopses of meetings. I once had a 1.5 hour requirements meeting with a client, and beforehand, I would have had to furiously been taking notes during that call. And I probably would have either missed something in the call or I would have forgotten to write something down. By recording that call and getting AI to generate a transcript, I'm going, okay, I'm going to get all those requirements and I can really fully engage with that client by focusing 100% of my attention on them. And then I can have AI do the analysis of the transcript and go, okay, these are the requirements. It took Working with the AI, it took me only half an hour to pull the requirements out of that 90-minute conversation. Had I had to do it the old fashioned way, it probably would have eaten the entire afternoon. Yeah, it lets me get to work really quickly. And I can see that also outside the technical realm where you're talking with the customer and you need to find out what they need or what their pain points are or what their primary concerns are. Wouldn't it be yeah, it's fantastic to have the AI just pull those all out for you and go, "Great, I've got a list. Now I can really get to work." And then, of course, with coding, really, really nice. I can now, instead of worrying about the how the thing gets done, I'm spending more time specifying what needs to get done.
yeah, yeah. That's great. I see it like distillation, right? You take something very raw that has a lot of potential, different parts to it, and then with AI, ideally you would handle the distillation manually, but with AI that all happens automatically and really and quickly as well. And you could draw up conclusions or you get a starting point for like either content you want to create or decisions that you need to make. And yeah, that's a great point. And I like the part you said about how you generate like the first bit of content and you you know it's trash. Like this isn't great content. So you delete it, but it's done something. It's put ideas in your head. It's told
Hmm.
you here's where you could start from if you wanted to start. So you're no longer struggling with a blank page. I mean, you have a blank page, but you have a full mind now,
Yes.
and you know what you want to get at. Um, and it feels like having. I guess that's why startups like Granola are is very popular, right? Because meetings and getting meetings are a place where you get a lot of content, a lot of data. Right? Ordinarily, you need to take notes, and with taking notes, you lose a lot of stuff from taking notes, right? So now these note takers have become like super valuable, just having in conversations, having this AI agents be in meetings and then support whatever action comes next, right? And then you can also compose all these meetings over time to draw out even more knowledge. And these meetings and these conversations become context for other actions that happen afterward. And this brings me to a point that I've been thinking about personally. So internally,
Hmm.
we've been thinking about, or I read somewhere about company world models. I can't remember who put that out, right? But
Okay.
basically, the thesis here is that a bottleneck to companies fully realizing the value of AI is there really isn't a general context of the company that an AI tool, like or an AI agent has, right? The AI agent is either siloed in engineering, they're siloed in sales, they're siloed in marketing, in admin, across multiple tools. So there's a tool sprawl as well, right? Every existing tool you have currently has a shiny AI glitter button on it, right? So
Right.
for teams to win with AI agents, there needs to be some sort of a company world model that understands everything, that expands, self-sufficient or like self-updating as well. Basically, just having memory. We know memory is a very that's a very tough problem to solve, even for
Oh, yeah.
humans. Not to talk of AI agents, right? But having this complete world model, I think, is important. We've been thinking about GTM world models
Okay.
for teams. We're building Boki.io internally to think about this. So basically, we create content in previously we used like 4 or 5 different tools just to write one blog post. So we had
Right.
obviously project management tool, Notion, and then you'd have um, Google Docs or Dropbox paper for actually writing it. And then
Hmm.
you need a CMS to publish it on the website. You need something like Buffer or Planable to like create social
For the
content.
yes.
Yeah, we need to use like Bitly or short.io or Dub to create short links. And eventually we track success in Google Analytics or Post Hub, right? So we had all these tools and we tried to drop intelligence on top of it. This meant that we needed connectors. And with connectors, stuff was still lost in translation, right? So we're building Boki to solve that for ourselves internally.
Okay.
An AI
Nice.
agent that sits on top of our GTM from the marketing side of things, um,
Okay.
at least. So at least we can understand attribution, right, in general. So I'm curious, while we talk about context engineering, is this something that you've thought about? The the piece that is a company world model, at least from a GTM standpoint. If there was going to be something like that, what are critical aspects or components to it? If this is something you're thinking about.
It is something I'm thinking about. I guess the first thing, of course, is some kind of standard for giving systems like this memory, of course, because they're going to need to understand not just the history of a single workflow, but the history of all the workflows so that it can actually gather information and ideally learn or that optimize that GTM flow workflow so that the next time it does it better, or at least it knows how to do it automatically. And memory is a really big help with that. That is a problem that a number of companies are trying to solve. And in fact, it's coming from in at least one place. I haven't kept up with the news on how on what they've been doing lately, but I know that even Mila Jovovich, the actress from The Fifth Element, has
Yeah.
co-authored a memory system, and she has a GitHub account. I didn't even.
What?
Yeah. So yeah, Lilu from the Fifth Element. She
Yeah.
had a problem where the AI was not remembering. I don't know exactly what her problem was, but she was just going, the memory systems that exist do not work for me. I worked with this programmer. I have I have developed it. I've pushed it to GitHub. Please try it out. She made that announcement, I think, 2 weeks ago, and I still need to look at it. I've just been so busy, but yeah, and there are companies out there who are building proposed memory solutions for AI systems to remember more, because they've got the compute, and they've got a lot of the problem solving stuff down now, and the big challenges, of course, are either memory or action. In other words, getting the AI to do things on your behalf. That is why OpenClaw is all the rage right now. So yeah, memory and what I call hands, or in other words, giving your AI hands so it can perform actions. That is a big challenge. I think the other challenge, and I don't know how you approach this aside from writing additional documents, is capturing tacit knowledge, or in other words, knowledge that is in people's heads but is not written down anywhere else in the organization. It's that knowledge that, oh, I need to know. Um, I know how to do this well because I know this little trick, or I know that for my particular audience, there are specific times and places that are most effective to post on social media. I know this from experience, but nobody has written this down anywhere. This is stuff that you just internalize. And there has to be a way for either an AI to learn how to deduce that tacit knowledge, or there has to be a way or a system for somebody to explain it to the AI. Because of we've observed this, and we have found out that our particular audience likes to drink coffee and read this particular social media platform at 10 a.m. on Mondays, and this is when you strike with the messaging to get people to come to our site, or download something, or take whatever action it is. Or here's where, yeah. Yeah, this is the point where you put the call to action. Yeah, this is internal stuff that we know internally that we need to explain to machines. That is
Yeah.
never written down anywhere.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's the skills specification now, right? With everyone writing skills for the same reason is
Mhm.
that, that tribal knowledge that you possess, put it in a skill. But then I see a problem, which is um people usually don't know what they know until they
Oh,
need to
yeah.
put it to use, right? Like I don't know the breadth of everything I know until someone asks me a question. And then I'm like, oh, I know that. So maybe the solution could be an agent that quizzes everyone, asks the right question, just has a 30-minute conversation, and slowly, like progressively uncovers the breadth of would I say the breadth of potential knowledge that you could have. So an agent, this is just me rambling, but an agent that starts from understanding your job description, what are some of the areas of the company you could touch, what are some knowledge bits, like themes that you probably cover or you've executed on, what are sample projects in the past that you've worked on, and what are some learnings, like what was the toughest thing you encountered there, because usually problems birth either like new ways of thinking or new solutions, and you just voice these things out, you rant, complain, babble on for like 30 minutes, an hour, and he takes all that, structures it, pulls out relevant information, and then that forms some tribal knowledge it could commit to memory, right? And it
Yes.
is contextual to the work you do. So maybe that's one way to approach this. I think I need to try that internally and see.
Yeah. And
And
that's a
see.
tricky thing. And that
Mhm.
that is the non-intrusive way to do
Yeah.
it. Now, the challenge is, of course, and you've probably seen this yourself, since you do a lot of GTM, is there's a difference between what people say and what people do. There is a more intrusive way to do it, and it's going to and we have to think about it because I'm uncomfortable about it, and that would be have the AI not ask questions but just observe what you
Yeah.
do and extract knowledge from the patterns of your actions and the way you conduct your day. And the AI, because AIs are fantastic pattern detection machines, is that
Yeah.
they will go, "Oh, I notice you do this at this particular time or in this particular way," and then start building on that. The problem, of course, is that you're being watched, and it's in a record somewhere. And of course, somebody in the organization, with who's high enough and up in the organization can always use it as a surveillance tool. And that's the challenge now we're being watched by things with really good that can record things with perfect memory and fidelity to a hard drive or whatever memory system we decide to use. And we now need to balance the power of AI with, of course, the necessity of privacy and just being able to conduct our work without being watched like a hawk while we do it.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with you. And I know folks have built systems that, sits on your computer, watch everything you do and learns from it, right? So it can do it. It can suggest tasks to take over. But obviously, everyone is scared of like, privacy. If it's watching my computer, can the developers of the product also see my computer? Because they need some analytics. Everyone puts it in by default,
Right.
and some say this is local first, but then our risk aversion as humans stop us from wanting to commit to this because you're like, what happens in the future if someone gains access to my computer and then they get access to like all these files about me, about my conversations and personal details. So that fear kind of like deters people from wanting to go further. But yeah, I see how that is that is that could be a challenge. Um, but final question: if there was one thing you would advise anyone that is AI curious, currently a developer advocate, um, they're seeing this. There's a lot of FOMO, right? There's a lot of things you need to consume. You need to try new tools, new models. Is there one thing you would advise them to just lock in on and get to the bottom of? So, what's one thing you advise them to get deep as possible at? And then they can continue spreading wide on other things. But for that one thing, they need to go as deep as possible. If there was one
That
thing like that,
one
what would it
thing?
be?
Okay. It would not be a specific technology or tool or anything like that. In the end, I would say what you should do is find one problem that eats up a lot of your time and see if you can apply AI to at least help you with the workload or reduce the time that it takes to perform that particular task. The nice thing about doing that is it makes it a little more real because if this is a task that you have to do regularly, that's either time or effort intensive. This is something you know really well. This is something, and because of that, you would be able to better apply AI uh, to help solve that problem. And in the process, you will learn how to use AI to solve that particular situation. And of course, get more confident in using AI for future situations. Because in the end, you know what confidence is just remembering past successes more than more than anything else. So, one very simple example of using AI to solve a problem that's either time or effort intensive is for Tampa Bay. What I do is I generate a list of tech events, local tech events, every week, and there are a lot of them. And I have a Python script that scrapes sites like Meetup.com and Luma and arranges calendars of these events. But many of these events that it pulls up aren't applicable. And what I did was I used an AI. I had my program call an AI and just go, look, based on the description of the event, give me a 0 to 100% ranking of how relevant this is to my particular audience, which is going to largely be techies or people working in the tech industry or who are tech adjacent, and rule out other industries. And because of that, I now, when I have to make the call on what goes in the calendar and what doesn't, I actually have I have these automatic rankings that say, yeah, this one's really relevant, this one's not. Has really cut down the time it takes for me to generate that list, which is very useful to the Tampa Bay tech community. And yeah, that's a very simple example of how I used AI to just reduce the amount of work that I have to do in order to get this thing done. Definitely cut down what's normally an hour-long task to about 20 minutes, and that 66% time savings goes a long way.
Yeah, that's a great point. So with AI or with just about any tool, you want to be able to realize success as quickly as possible, so it reinforces the mental model to keep going. And to do that, you need something with a deterministic outcome, something that you've done or like you do already. You know what
That you
success looks
understand
like.
well.
Yeah, you know what success looks like for it. So you apply AI to it, reduce, take time as a variable that you want to drive down. The outcomes still need to be the same, only
Yes.
at lesser time. Don't change any other thing. Just use AI, try to reduce the time and get the same outcomes as you would if you did it manually.
Yes,
That's a
and
great point,
yeah,
Joey.
and try and solve a real problem that affects you, because there are a lot of tutorials out there, but all those many of those tutorials are about solving some contrived example problem that's not as applicable to you. This is why a lot of people have Udemy accounts but never use them. It's
Yeah,
because they're just stuck in the land of tutorials. Yeah, be practical. Find a practical use and learn from that.
yeah. Make it practical. And then lastly, I totally forgot, but um what could you say what you do at Net Foundry?
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
my job is to promote NetFoundry to developers and go, hey, you want to use the solution. And NetFoundry is very simply a network overlay that protects your network by by basically making it invisible to the outside world unless you have the right cryptographic credentials. So basically what it does is it just reduces the attack surface of your network and your system to zero. As far if you try and scan a a system protected by OpenZD, which is NetFoundry's system, it looks like there's no way to get in. We have basically made the incoming ports, basically which are doors for data, completely invisible to outside systems unless you have the cryptographic identity, which is basically a special cryptographic key that says yes. I am allowed to access this machine for this particular purpose. We basically lock it down. And you know what? In a world with ubiquitous networking and AI agents out there, the one thing we need to do is reduce the attack surface area for our systems, and that's what NetFoundry does. It is a little bit of a complex thing to explain to both developers and non-technical people, and my job is to make it not only digestible but help you integrate it with your systems and help developers write applications based on it and become successful as quickly as possible.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I just wanted to know what NetFoundry does, and that was a good way to put it. I think
Very
these
glad to
systems
help.
that protect us become super important as
Yeah.
we deploy more agents and let things loose out there. Thank you so much for coming on, Joey. This has been a fantastic episode.
William, thank you for having me.
Yeah, the time flew by and it's been great. But to everyone out there listening, that was today's episode of Everything Outside Code, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.